There is a strange reality baked into personal finance. Every day, highly intelligent, analytically gifted professionals go completely broke, while average earners working completely normal jobs quietly build massive generational wealth. We fall into this trap because we plan like machines, but we act like humans. We build perfect, highly optimized financial plans, assuming we will always execute them logically. But that flawless math inevitably falls apart the moment it encounters the raw stress and uncertainty of a real-world market downturn. We often assume that extreme financial success is the direct result of pure intellect. Look at Bill Gates in the early 1970s. He was undeniably brilliant and incredibly disciplined, but he also happened to attend one of the only high schools in the entire country that owned a computer. That 1 in a million stroke of luck gave him years of hands-on practice before most of the world had even seen a keyboard. Now compare that to his close friend, Kent Evans. He was equally brilliant and shared the exact same obsession with computers, but Kent died in a mountaineering accident before they even graduated high school. He experienced a catastrophic 1 in a million risk that ended his life before it truly began. Two brilliant minds, two wildly different outcomes. Assuming your financial trajectory is entirely determined by your own logic and intelligence blinds you to those massive, uncontrollable forces of luck and risk that operate constantly in the background. Because we are highly social creatures, our brains are wired to interpret wealth visually. If we see the markers of success, we believe the story attached to them, especially if that story is comforting or exciting. We follow fictions because they feel good, even when the underlying data says otherwise. You saw this clearly during the crypto boom of late 2021. Thousands poured their savings into tokens with no utility and no roadmap. They weren't analyzing the mathematical reality or the underlying technology. They were buying a flashy, socially driven dream sold by influencers living loud, expensive lifestyles. We buy these markers of wealth because we want admiration, but we misunderstand how admiration works. Author Morgan Housel calls this the man in the car paradox. When you see a Ferrari driving down the street, your first thought isn't to admire the driver. You simply imagine yourself behind the wheel. We buy luxury items to impress people who are entirely busy using our stuff to project their own desires. Chasing that validation leads to a very specific trap, never defining what enough means. By 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried was worth over $20 billion. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but instead of establishing an endpoint, he quietly mixed customer funds to chase more status, more control, and more admiration, eventually collapsing his entire empire overnight. You don't have to be a billionaire to fall into this trap. Picture a lawyer making $250,000 a year, but if they buy the luxury car, the high-end mortgage, and the private schools, their lifestyle scales up at the exact same pace as their income. One missed paycheck or medical emergency, and they lose everything. Looking rich requires spending. Being wealthy requires exactly the opposite. Spending money to show people how much money you have is mathematically the fastest way to have less of it. Society promotes the visible markers of success, the exotic vacation, the new watch, the upgraded house. But wealth lives in the financial assets that have not been converted into stuff. It is the gap between your ego and your income. Building those invisible assets relies on something entirely disconnected from stock-picking talent or market timing. Warren Buffett is one of the most successful investors in human history, but his true superpower is simply time. This chart maps the exponential curve of compounding. Notice how the wealth line stays almost entirely flat for decades, but eventually you hit a vertical late-stage spike. Out of Warren Buffett's roughly $160 billion net worth, more than $156 billion of it was accumulated after his 65th birthday. Compounding relies on long periods of boredom. It requires achieving average, repeatable returns over decades, and, most importantly, refusing to interrupt the process. Real wealth is built slowly and quietly in the background. It's a mathematical process completely divorced from our need for social validation. Holding those assets long-term requires paying a steep, invisible price. Investing doesn't come with a standard receipt. You pay for it emotionally through the intense stress, doubt, and gut-wrenching discomfort of market volatility. Take a look at Netflix. Between 2002 and 2018, the stock delivered a 35,000% return. But this chart shows the actual experience of holding that stock over those 16 years. Yes, the massive upward trend is there, but look at the deep, terrifying plunge valleys covering almost the entire timeline. To capture that gain, you had to endure the fact that Netflix spent 94% of that exact period trading below its previous all-time high. Successful investors treat volatility as a fee for future returns. It is the cost of staying in the game long enough for the math to work. If you view these drops as a punishment, you'll likely abandon the strategy right before it pays off. Surviving that emotional cost provides a reward beyond more numbers on a screen. Savings create space. They provide the ability to wait for the right job, walk away from the wrong one, or handle a crisis without fear. This endurance earns you autonomy. Money pays many dividends, but control over your time is the most valuable. Having the ability to wake up every morning and choose your own path is the ultimate utility of wealth.